welcome to the Trusted Advisor, a channel-focused podcast and video series powered by the Retail Solutions Providers Association. I'm Jim Roddy, your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us. This pod and video series is designed specifically for point-of-sale resellers and software developers, and our goal is to educate you on the topics of technology, leadership, management, sales, marketing, and other small business best practices. Today on the podcast, we'll be talking about the transition from VAR to software developer with two special guests. Danny Hernandez is the CEO of Global Business Technologies in Mission, Texas on the U.S.-Mexico border. Danny founded the company in 1998 and has morphed his business model several times since then, operating as a sole proprietor ISO in the payments world, a value-added reseller, and today as an ISV, independent software vendor, for those of you not up on the acronyms. Global Business targets mostly the grocery and C-store verticals, while also serving retail and quick service restaurants. Hey, Danny, thanks for your time today.
Hello, thanks for the invite, Jim. I really appreciate it.
No, pleasure to cross paths with you again. Our second special guest is Brett Bennett, the president and co-founder of VAR Positive Technology and ISV OpSuite. Positive was established in 1998 to serve the retail market and is known today as one of the leading retail resellers in North America. OpSuite was launched in 2009 as a cloud-based business management software for the retail and franchise retail industries. Hey, Brett, great to talk with you again.
Hey, Jim. Hey, Danny. Looking forward to it.
Hey, Brett.
Wonderful. Me too. And before we get to our questions, our audience might be wondering why we're featuring two guests instead of a more traditional one-on-one interview for podcasts. So for those of you new to the pod, here's why. The biggest strength of the RSPA is the community and the partnerships that can be forged sometimes where you least expect them. So that's what we're going to do on many episodes of the Trusted Advisor. We're going to show the RSPA community in action by having guests share their unique perspectives and see where the conversation takes us. So that's what happens every day among RSP members, and we thought it'd be interesting to share that with you. All right, let's rock and roll. So, gentlemen, I gave very brief backgrounds on your organizations at the outset. And so if you can each go deeper and share with us some more detailed account of how your company morphed from the reseller business model to now developing, marketing, and selling your own software. And, this is, from experience, this is far more complex than just a VAR adding another product line or a small business, just keeping up with the time. So, Danny, first, can you talk about your VAR to ISV path, please?
I guess what really started the whole thinking process of developing our software is opportunity. There's a big opportunity here in Texas in the grocery space where essentially the state went from a voucher-based system to an EBT card, the smart card-based system. And that was for the WIC program, the Women, Infant, and Children, which is available in all 50 states. So there was huge opportunity there. Everybody, all the stores that were accepting WIC vouchers essentially had to get a POS system that can read that state-issued card. And so we're very limited in options at that time. I want to say there was 5 or 6 software vendors, and out of those 5 or 6 vendors, maybe 4 were corporate, for Walmart and all the larger retail stores. So there was really only like 2 independent software vendors that we had access to. And that's really what started the whole idea of developing our own software. And then it kind of just evolved from there. We've been in the grocery space for so long now and servicing over 2,200 locations all across Texas. It was just natural for us to go in that direction.
Got it. And can you share with us how many employees do you have now, and then how many of them are developers?
Well, we have 9 employees and a couple of part-time. So we have 9 full-time employees. 1 is a full-time developer, and we do work with a couple of contractors that help us throughout the development process.
Got it. Okay. And then do you operate your ISV as a separate business, or is it all bundled together under Global? Like, is it the same business that you have?
Yeah. Currently, we have it set up where it's running under Global. But as the distribution channel grows, and we're definitely going to be separating it very soon, actually.
Got it. Okay. Well, thank you. Brett, can you share with us your path from Positive as a VAR to then adding OpSuite and what your business looks like today?
Absolutely, thank you. So this year, actually, we celebrated our 20th year in business as Positive Technology, and it was about 10 years ago that after being a kind of a traditional VAR for 10 years, we started seeing, some kind of changes in the market, changes in the POS world, at least things that we thought would start to happen. And so we started to think that we really need to diversify, kind of put ourselves in a little better position to survive what we thought was going to be coming around the corner. So at that time, we actually approached a couple of our larger customers. Both of them had actually over 100 stores each. And we kind of approached them with an idea of a new product, a new retail back end, if you will, that would be cloud based. And in 2009, that was pretty bold, especially for the retail world. And but we felt confident in it. And so we approached these customers, and they actually agreed to partner with us, kind of help fund the project, along with some, along the way we would give them some benefits as well. Not only that, they would have input on the product, but also some price discounts once the product came available. At the same time, we felt like the traditional selling model of, sell something, get the payment up front, and go sell something else was starting to get a little long in the tooth. So we wanted to also transition to a subscription selling model. So we were biting off a lot at one time, but we felt it was the right thing to do. So we spent about a year, maybe 18 months, coming up with our first version of our solution, which was really a full retail back office, everything that you need to run on the back end. And we connected to various points of sale on the front end. So we were still a VAR from that standpoint. And then we went ahead and installed in these two partner customers of ours, gave them a greatly reduced monthly price, and really started, finding out how different being a developer can be, because now we had all this responsibility of quality control and new versions and things like that. So it was a good learning experience. So that at that point we spent the next couple of years kind of honing things, coming out with a few new versions, and we came out with a new point of sale module for our solution as well, and then spent a couple of years again, kind of honing it, transitioning to a full subscription model, to where today we are 100% subscription model, or SaaS, if you will, and we even include the hardware and services into the mix. So it took us about 10 years to transition completely from a traditional VAR with traditional sales model to a combined ISV VAR with a full subscription selling model.
Got it. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And how many employees do you have now, and how many of them are developers? And I guess also that same thing, do you operate, Positive and OpSuite as separate businesses, or are they all one together?
Yeah, so that's an interesting, a good question. So we're currently about 45 employees. We have eight developers, and they're split between our back office and our front office. And then I kind of mix in with them our house of six QA, because QA teams are actually developers today, and they write almost as much code as our other developers. So we kind of include those in the mix. And we had been operating separately, Positive and OpSuite, but last year we actually combined the two back together, and everything's running under Positive Technology now, for various reasons. But it's turned out very, 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 very well.
Do you mind sharing with us the various reasons? I mean, if it's private, confidential stuff, I don't need to, get into that. I'm just curious from a business standpoint for our listeners, if they're thinking about separating and not separating it.
Well, we originally separated for thinking that we would have a big VAR channel to work with on the OpSuite side, because we wanted to, open that up and sell through a large channel. That hasn't necessarily been the case, and so that reason was kind of out of the way. And then our trusty advisors on our accounting side have basically said, this is, the model to go with is, S corp, bring everything together and roll with it. And so tax reasons and various others as well. So so we made that change.
Got it. Okay, well, thank you for that. And Danny, Brett brought up, he said, it's different. And so I feel like, this is the old Johnny Carson thing. It's really different. The crowd says, how different is it? So that's what I guess my question is for you, Danny. How different is it now that you have the ISV component compared to when you had you still have the VAR component, and then also compared to that ISO component, because you've seen that whole spectrum. So what are the differences that you're experiencing managing the business now with the ISV component?
Well, one of the key points that I forgot to mention right now is this is actually our second attempt. So our first attempt was back in 2010, but I think the mindset is quite different. Just being involved with the whole workflow of development is different than being a VAR. So I think during that period of time, I did learn a lot. That initial investment that we did on that first attempt was a big learning curve. We went back to the drawing board essentially and came up with documentation. We were able to document about 400 pages between wireframes and function sets that we needed in the software. And I think that's really what helped the second attempt to really go out, start the development smoothly, and to make it more successful is that time that we put into all the documentation.
Got it. And so that's my next question was going to be, looking back on your transformation, what did you do well? What would you have done differently? What did you not do right besides that documentation the first time? Was it just not enough research? Was it you just didn't understand it? Was it bad timing? Because 10 years ago, the economy was in a much different shape than it is right now. What were some of the factors that you look back, if you were going to hit it right the first time you did it, what things would you have done differently beyond the documentation?
I think it is important as an ISV is to really put a lot of focus in that one vertical versus trying to just cover everything. So that's one of the things that we're definitely doing differently now is essentially we're just focused in the grocery space. And so as an ISV, or I'm sorry, as a VAR, we just didn't see that the importance of having a developer just develop that key functionality for our end user. And so that really helped. Once we became part of the development process, it is essential to just stay as focused as possible on that vertical.
Got it. I guess, Brett, I'll ask you the same question, but before that, I'm curious, do you see it the same way as Danny from an ISV standpoint? I mean, even though as a VAR, you've been laser focused on retail. Is that, I guess, a thing for our listeners? If they are going to make the transition from VAR to ISV, they really have to focus on a niche aspect of that ISV to be successful. Do you see it the same way?
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't, you almost can't put enough emphasis on that because, we've been in business now. This is going on our 21st year, and there's always these little temptations, right, that are out there, and they're like, "Oh, look at me! I can get you, this amount of money right now if you just do this." It never works out that way. You always lose money. You need to focus. Focus is so key, and it has to be laser focus, right on point.
And so I guess, can you give an example of how you laser focus today? Is it just on that vertical? I guess, or what are the building blocks that go into that to make sure that you're laser focused?
Yeah, for us, in retail, and we have some specific areas of retail that we focus on. Of course, specialty retail, but we do a lot of sports memorabilia, sports arenas, things like that. And then we have some offshoots of that, but they're all in that same line of very specialty type retailers that offer a certain product mix. And so we focus on that. And, my partner and I, we talk about strategy and where we're going next. And anytime either one of us even mentions, stepping off that line a little bit, it's just kind of, a little smack from the other saying, no, we're not going to do that. And, we keep each other on track by literally just kind of giving each other a little tap and don't forget where we're going. So it's a weekly thing, right? Because there's always something that could, well, this is right there. We've got it within our grasp. So
got it. Yeah, the ooh shiny, it'll distract you from
shiny.
what you're from your standpoint.
Yeah.
And then Brett, can you continue? You mentioned about the intellectual property that you have and rolling that out. Can you talk about how important that is to you and your partner Mike Nicholson from a business valuation standpoint? At some point you're going to sell the business or hand it off, right? Like Mother Time is undefeated in terms of people leading businesses. And then can you also talk about the importance of having your own intellectual property from a survivability standpoint, like helping you stand apart from your competition today?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So again, we've been around a little while. There's a lot of our peers that have been around longer and some that haven't. But during that time, at least every year, you kind of look at your business and you say, what are we worth? What are we doing? What's coming for the future? What am I leaving for my children? Or whatever it happens to be. And 10 years ago, we had no clue, right? You look at it, and as a pure VAR, it's what can you sell next? And of course, if you transition into a more of a subscription type seller, that changes quite a bit because you have something a little more tangible. But we really, 10 years ago, we really wanted to do two things. One, we wanted to become more independent, be able to do things that we knew were right for the market. We felt like we could see what was coming, or at least what the trend was going to change to. So we wanted to be independent enough to get there, because we didn't feel like anyone else was getting there. So independence, and then number two, we wanted to build something tangible that we could put a value on, and that's why we decided at that point, we're going to build our own products, and we're going to change to a subscription-based model. Those two things combined, I believe, are that tangible piece that allow us to go out and pretty easily say, here's what it is. And anyone interested could say, all right, it's going to be 4x or 5x or whatever it happens to be. There's your number, and away you go. So we feel a lot more comfortable with that today. Not that it's easy, because there were a lot of roadblocks, obstacles, and things you have to climb over, but definitely worth it.
Got it. So Danny, can you take that question as well? And we're talking about the intellectual property is something that you have and something that you own, how important that is to your business. Because as a VAR, you really have those relationships and your reputation, which is valuable, but a different kind of thing. How does the IP help you from the long term and the short term, standing apart from the competition, Danny?
Well, just like Brett mentioned, I think it really gives us back control of our destiny. We get to decide where we're going versus having an ISV dictate that, or an ISO for that matter, with everything going on right now. But I think that's really what the decision that we made that's really helped us, and we're able to now plan long term, going with the SaaS model now. I would say we're not fully transitioned over. I know Brett mentioned he was 100%, but we're probably at about 80-85% right now. And converting over to SaaS was huge for us, and we did start the transition over back when RSPA. I remember attending the conference in 2010 or so, where they were really pushing that on us. I did come in a little bit late in the game. I want to say we started to transition in 2016, but honestly, that was the best thing that we can do, because that reoccurring revenue just changes everything for us. But going back to the intellectual property, having our code, being able to take those opportunities that maybe we couldn't approach because of the software solutions that we had available to us, now we're able to take on these opportunities.
So can you detail that for us? Like, how does it open up more opportunities for you?
Just as an example, we've partnered up with a local distributor, vendor for a lot of the independent grocery stores. And so we're able to exchange data with them. We're able to update our end users' costs, retail prices, inventory quantities automatically using an EDI interface. Because it is a regional distributor, it would be very unlikely that an ISV would do that development because it is time consuming. But at the same time, it allows our end user to have that functionality that they can't get anywhere else. So it fills that niche, and it makes those accounts stick with the software solution because of all the time that they're saving.
It was like you were reading my mind. I was going to say that sounds like it's super sticky. Like it would be hard for them to boot you from a relationship because they'd have to take out their backbone.
Right. And so we did the local vendor distribution module. The other thing that we also did was DEX, which is it's a variety of EDI. So DEX is what a lot of the DSD drivers, they carry the handhelds, and they're essentially unloading the packaging from their trucks. Well, now we're able to interface to those handhelds, so it will send the invoice electronically to the POS back office. And so we're able to adjust inventory quantities, returns, damaged goods. We adjust costs, and if there's any promotional pricing that's date-based, we get that information through DEX as well. So that's another function, another feature that we offer our clients that no one else is, or it's going to be very hard to come by, unless it's a large retailer, you know, with hundreds of locations.
Got it. Very interesting. I'll just make 2 points here. One is it's really interesting that you're both thrilled that you have your own intellectual property and you're on the recurring revenue business model. But Danny, you said yours was more opportunistic, right? Where you saw a niche to fill and then went down this path. And Brett, yours was more strategic. And it's almost like it doesn't matter where you start, but as long as you get there, right, to have that intellectual property and that recurring revenue. I guess if either one of you wants to comment on that. Am I reading that accurately? Like, doesn't matter what your reasons are behind it, but going down that path is going to be better for your business, better for your customer relationships.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things that I was thinking of just the other day is that, you know, if somebody were coming to get advice on, you know, should you do this? You know, what's your last 10 years been like? Well, you know, absolutely move forward as quickly as you can, but do it with caution. But the great thing is today, which I had some resources back then, but not as many as there's available today. I mean, today, just looking at the RSPA itself, you know, there's members, there's advisors, there's people who've already gone through this and can give advice on, you know, where should we go? How should we start? What direction should we head? Those are all, you know, things that are available to be answered. So I think now, above any other time, is the right time to do it.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I remember being at an RSPA. This is an Inspire conference, and it was a vendor working group. Was a committee that used to have meeting there, talking about the recurring revenue business model. The vendors in the room were saying, well, who's going to own the hardware? Who's going to own the software? Like, they didn't even have those fundamental things figured out. And we said, whoever figures that out is going to be a hero and is going to make a lot of money. And what you're saying, Brett, is in 2020, those things have been figured out.
Absolutely.
You know, there's no doubt about it. So there are resources. And Danny, let me get your take on another observation I had as you and Brett were talking. I wrote down VAR equals busy, but busy doesn't necessarily equal valuable. So I guess, can you talk about that in terms of, I mean, you're super busy having both the, you know, the ISO, VAR, and ISV. Can you talk about, I guess, do you believe that that's true, that a lot of times resellers are thinking, I'm really busy getting stuff done, I don't have time to do that intellectual property thing, whether it's a backbone or whether it's an add-on? Can you talk about that, how it's worth carving out some time to invest to make yourself more valuable? What's your take on that?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it's just like anything else. You know, you spend that extra hour reading, learning something new. It's the same thing, and that's how it started with us. Is that I was documenting. Whenever I would see a feature on maybe a video, anything like that, I would document it. And to this day, I still do. And so that really, putting in the time is really, really important. It does take time. I mean, especially you're essentially splitting your day into two different things. And being a small business, you definitely have to put in those extra hours to get that done. But for me, it's very fulfilling. I mean, we see that intellectual property growing day in, day out. We don't have a distribution channel at the moment, so it's all internal distribution. But we like the fact that we do have that control.
Got it. Very good. Before we take a quick commercial break, I'll ask each of you, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing today as an ISV that has a VAR component? I guess, Brett, if you can take that first.
Well, for us personally, we've always been involved in a reseller channel of, in fact, usually a bunch of different reseller channels. And so as we transitioned into our own intellectual property, as well as the more SaaS model, the more subscription-based model, we wanted to try and kind of create that same opportunity by creating a channel of our own, a reseller channel. The challenges that we faced and still face is that the traditional VAR still kind of needs to rely on that bigger kind of payout at the end of the sale that just doesn't exist anymore. That payout is over 2 years or 3 years, depending on, the deal. It includes hardware, software, so there's not this big payout. And so we haven't been able to come up with a good model to offer our reseller channel in order to take that step, which we still want to do. So that is definitely a challenge for us. A challenge that we're meeting, by our own sales teams and things like that, which works great. As Danny said, we love that control. We know that we can take care of the customer. We know we can keep that customer forever, but it kind of limits us on our breadth, where we can go. So that is a challenge, one that we're continually working on.
And what's the solution to that? Like, if you had a magic wand, is it that the VARs would be better financed? Like, is that what it is? It's just a cash flow issue for them? I guess, what is the obstacle that has been difficult to either get over, get under, get around, get through, whatever, preposition you want to put in there?
Sure. I guess it is, just like the challenge we faced in making that transition to, from traditional to a subscription, they faced the same thing. And those that have been willing to do it are usually also ISVs, or, they've done something similar, or they've been gulped up by somebody else that and they work for somebody. It would be wonderful to find some of those entrepreneurial types that will take that challenge and at least do some of their business in this model. And as they do, of course, over time, it becomes a huge windfall, because now you wake up on the first of the month and you're paid. It takes a while to get there, but you're paid. And so that's what we're looking for, is some that will take that challenge.
Got it. Thank you. And Danny, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing now? Is that dual VAR ISV?
Well, I've been giving that a lot of thought. Are we going to go with a dealer channel, or are we going to keep it in-house and focus on the growth in-house? So I think that's the biggest challenge, and that's the challenge that we're facing really this year. And challenges are good. It's good to kind of have these different options, I guess, and figure out what's the best option. But one of the things I think, going back to resources and everything that Brett mentioned right now, is one of the ways that we were able to start our development was actually becoming an ISO. So that really, really produced the resources that we needed to actually do the development. And we did that for a couple of years. After a couple of years, we were pretty much on that reoccurring model. That really pushed us to turn our POS into a SaaS model, and essentially have resources, have money to put into these additional projects. And one of the projects being our own software. So, so definitely the resources need to be there, but it's one of those things that you slowly build up, and you will get there. This wasn't an overnight thing for us, at least.
But it seems like the ISO model was more of an injection for you, where it immediately got you on that recurring revenue business model. Not that the cash piled up, that first month, but it was faster than trying to sell a point of sale system on a monthly basis. Am I understanding that correctly? Like there was only one way to do it, and it was built right in there.
Right. Yeah. So, well, from being a referral partner to becoming an agent to becoming an ISO, those three transitions there, where we were just seeing that reoccurring revenue just grow, and so it just naturally turned into, hey, why can't everything be reoccurring? I mean, it helps the help desk. There's no more, are they under service contracts? Are they under warranty? There's if a client calls in, they're going to be on a SaaS model. And if a technician needs to be sent out, a field tech needs to be sent out, we send them out. So it actually reduces a lot of overhead in the office as well. So this whole reoccurring model, there's so many aspects to it, it just makes sense. It makes sense to go that route.
Got it. I like how you outlined that. You went from referral to agent to ISO to VAR to ISV, right? You have a ring for every finger there. If they were handing those out for every different business model that you had. So kudos for making that transition. Well, let's pause here for a moment to let our listeners and viewers know that an RSPA membership has never been more valuable or more affordable. The RSPA recently expanded its VAR and ISV member benefits to include discounts on health insurance, HR services, office supplies, and shipping. Also, RSPA members now have access to a legal advisor, security advisor, sales coach, and a VAR and ISV business advisor, which both Brett and Danny know of already. They've talked about the services that RSPA offers. And so all those services and benefits are included in your annual RSPA membership, which a reseller starts at just $250 a year. That's 68 cents a day for these high-value services. Without an RSPA membership, you'll either spend thousands of dollars paying an outside consultant who doesn't know the channel, or you'll end up going it alone during these turbulent times in our industry. Accelerate your success by joining the RSPA today. Also, thank you to our sponsors who support the RSPA community and make this podcast and video series possible. Our platinum sponsors are Blue Star, Heartland, ScanSource, and Shift4 Payments. To receive the benefits of an RSPA membership or RSPA sponsorship, email membership@gorspa.org. Again, that's membership@gorspa.org. And finally, don't forget to save the date for Retail Now 2020, August 2nd through 5th at the Venetian in Las Vegas. Retail Now is where the industry meets. All right. Well, thank you for pausing for that commercial. Now, let me ask you this, and starting with you, Brett. You and Danny are both veterans of the POS channel, and have you experienced the highs and lows? Have you seen companies come and go? And so can you talk about the future for POS resellers who don't develop their own IP? We talked about your challenges, but we didn't of having that IP. We didn't talk about what if you didn't. So if you didn't have your own software, what actions would you be taking to ensure that your business is as strong as it can be 3, 5, 10 years from now? Or do you see that IP as vital to any reseller's success? What's your take on that?
Thanks. Yeah, I think, well, first of all, the point is the POS channel has been changing. It's been transitioning, and I don't think it's even 10% into the changes that are going to occur. So I think those changes are still very much in transition. I think that there's still a huge move to what we used to call mobile products, mobile OS, mobile platforms. I don't think they're mobile anymore. You look out there and Android and iOS and kind of smaller OSs are sitting on all kinds of different platforms, and I think there's a huge transition there that's still going to happen and is even gaining momentum today. I also believe that payments and the point of sale are going to continue to morph, and they're going to continue to merge. I think that payments become less of a process like they have been in the past, and more of the transaction. I think that they become so much more tighter involved. So I believe that the traditional VAR is definitely going to need to make some changes if they're not going to move towards an ISV, bring in some of their own IP, then I think that they need to take the steps necessary to move to a monthly income, to move to subscriptions, to the as a service type opportunity. I think that there's organizations like ours and many others who are ISVs or who are offering different products who are willing to help in that transition, willing to work with them and see what there is that's going to better meet their needs so that they can survive through that transition. It's not easy. It takes some time, but it's absolutely possible. Danny's done it. We've been able to do it, and many of our other peers I've talked to have done it. And there's the support of the RSPA as well to get that done. But I do believe that that's a critical piece for the traditional VAR to move that direction and add that value to their mix.
Let me ask a hypothetical question for you. So hypotheticals are always unfair to some degree. What if you didn't have the ISV component, you didn't have the recurring revenue component, and you and Mike, your partner, you talked to him and said, we should shift to that, and he was like, nah, we're not going to do it. So you guys didn't do it. Then what? Like, what would happen to a business like yours who didn't make the transition? Like you're saying it's critical. Is it like you won't be around, or you just won't enjoy as many profits? I guess what's your take on that? I'm curious to what degree you see the vitality of the importance of that as part of your business model.
Sure. Well, I think we've seen it in the POS channel. Those who started to make this change over the last 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, that they're in the process and they're succeeding in that process of transition. Those that weren't willing to, honestly, most of them are either working for one of those companies. They were, merged together, or they're in a very small market and working with a smaller customer base, which is great. It's just, where do you want to go and what do you want to do? I honestly, for our business, if Mike and I sat down to make that decision and have that discussion, it would be a discussion of, are we going to move forward or are we going to go do something else? Because that's the way I think it is. I don't. I think it would be a very difficult market right now in the traditional VAR space.
Got it. Thank you for sharing that, Danny. Can you share your take in terms of the future of POS resellers if they don't develop their own IP? Again, I asked a hypothetical, like what if you were in that spot? But then also, if you were in the spot and you wanted to make some moves and changes to your business to stay relevant 10 years from now, what would you be doing? What specifics can you share with our audience?
The first thing I would do is become a non-registered ISO, and that will just change everything. That reoccurring revenue is going to start coming in. Once you do that, you build up your revenue. It's going to create those resources that you need to really be independent of these vendors, I guess, that maybe want to take you in a certain direction. I've always been an against the grain kind of person, so that independence to me was very important. And so at one of the RSPA conferences, I was fortunate enough to meet another dealer that went through the whole ISO process and really pushed me in that direction. And yeah, definitely it makes the biggest difference. Again, without us becoming an ISO, we wouldn't have the resources to go pursue those other opportunities that we're pursuing now.
Got it. So that would be your advice for somebody to become an ISO. What if somebody didn't? What if, like I remember talking to a reseller one time, I don't remember their name. They were just passing at a retail now, and we are talking about the shift to recurring revenue business models like 4 years ago. And he was like, I sell cash registers, I sell point of sale. I'm not doing any of that stuff. Like what, I guess, is your take on that? Do you see that as like what Brett said? Hey, you'll just have a small piece of pie that you'll be able to watch over. Do you see that person being able to stay relevant, or is it going to be a big struggle for them? What's your take on that?
It's going to be a big struggle. Just everybody in payments now is in the POS industry. So either you're in payments yourself as a VAR, or they're gonna be able to take over that portion. Unfortunately, POS isn't as it was, 10 years ago. Now there's a lot of different options. A lot of ISOs have their own software. The leverage that we have as POS VARs is that we do have that technical side. I think that's where they're lacking, and so you need to leverage that, but along with the payments.
Got it. Thank you for that. And you bring up the point about being an ISO. Late last year, I was at Toshiba had an event down in Austin, and a reseller, flew in, and I asked him how he was doing, how his business was going. He said how the ISO model has really changed his business, and he leaned into me and said, I started 4 years ago. If I'd done it 10 years ago, I'd have flown here on my own private jet. Like, it is that lucrative for me. So I really appreciate him sharing that. I guess he agrees with you, Danny. So well, let me ask you this. We talked about the flexibility you both have with your own intellectual property. So where do you plan to go from here? ISVs can literally write their own future. So what do you plan to do with that ability? I guess Brett first, and then Danny.
Yeah, so we are continually developing our current product mix. So we have kind of an enterprise type solution now. This year, over the next couple of months, we're going to be introducing a kind of an entry level product as well. So I guess bottom line is we are continuing to develop. We're taking the opportunity. Business has been good, so we're putting that in directly back into the business, coming up with some additional products, new integrations, new offerings. I agree wholeheartedly with Danny on the payments front, and payments are a huge part of our business as well. We don't talk about it a lot because it sits there in the back and runs, but it is tremendous. And that's another area of our business that we're continually growing. And we expect a lot of growth there this year as well. So all those things combined and continuing to push forward on our own products.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. And Danny, where do you go from here? What do you see around the corner for global and for yourself running global?
Well, same thing. We're going to continue developing our solution, really laser focus on the grocery space, continue developing those vendor or third-party integrations. That's really what we're planning on this year is really building up on those integrations that we have going now.
Got it. And this seems to go back to what you guys said earlier, focus, focus, focus. Like neither one of you said, we're going to try this, we're going to try this. Like you were like, the path that we are on, we are going to keep going. So I'm glad you're clearly staying true to your word. I couldn't distract you over the last half hour. Last two questions for you. And Danny, if you could take this first for the grocery and C-store vertical, and then Brett for retail. We've touched on this a little bit, but I'm curious, what technologies will you be keeping an eye on? So again, Danny, first for grocery and C-store, what are some of the technologies you'll be really paying attention to?
I think the third-party delivery services. So I know in QSR and in restaurant, I mean, that's been going on for some time now, but we're actually seeing it now in grocery. So a lot of people want to go to a website and just have those list of items that they normally use on a weekly basis, just add them into a shopping cart and have them delivered. So that's something that we're keeping a close eye on. We're already seeing a couple of grocery stores in the area that are actually taking advantage of that technology. And I think it is the future. I think I do see a lot of customers going on a website or on a mobile app, ordering their groceries and either going by to pick them up at the curb or having them delivered directly to their store, to their door.
Got it. I was in a Whole Foods outside of Pittsburgh recently, and there almost seemed to be as many customers as there were the people walking around with with their carts and the brown bags and going over the list for folks. One thing I found interesting, and so Danny, I'm curious if you can give any insight on this. I asked one of them, like, is that list that you have in order of the way that the store is laid out? And he was like, no, this is a wild goose chase every single time we have to do it, because I saw them zigzagging all over the store. Like, why is that? Why in 2020 is that solution not in place yet? Or is that just a Whole Foods thing that they're going to be figuring out at some point in the future? Or is that something you're working on and maybe you shouldn't tell anybody?
that is actually something that we have a solution for, I should say. So one of the things that always comes up with stocking, right? So the efficiency of being able to stock the item much faster, or when you're tagging, you're changing those shelf tags, you want to make it as efficient as possible, and so you want to print them in a certain order. Well, because we already have that functionality in the software, we're able to leverage that for the third-party pickup. But yeah, definitely that is one of the things that we're considering.
Got it. Right. I thought I'm like at the peak of Whole Foods is like the top grocery considered, and then Amazon and all the technology, and here they are running around with lists all over the store. So like you're back in the Stone Age. Brett, you mentioned from a mobility standpoint, some technologies to be watching for retail. What else? What other things should retail VARs keep an eye on, and retail ISVs?
Sure. So we're keeping an eye on payments and customer loyalty, and kind of the way that those things are changing and also kind of merging together. Most of our customers, especially on the higher end, are really investigating new and better ways to allow their customers to pay, allow their customers to have loyalty discounts, whatever they can do to get that customer back over and over and over again. And when you're talking specialty retail, it can A, be a challenge, and B, if you can get them back over and over again, it can be very, very lucrative for them. So those are two things that we're keeping an eye on and working with partners on.
Got it. Great. Very interesting. The last question that we ask all our guests here on the Trusted Advisor podcast, start with you, Brett. Can you recommend for our audience a book to read or a podcast to listen to that would help them on their leadership journey? Brett first, and then Danny.
Sure. In thinking about this, the big change in going from VAR to ISV, a book that I finished not long ago was How to Fight a Hydra by Josh Kaufman. And it's actually fairly short. And it literally is a guide on successfully fighting a Hydra. And then he turns that into how to attack.
Say that again. What is that last word?
Hydra, the multi-headed monster from Greek myth. And so basically he talks how to fight a Hydra, but he turns it into how to attack a big project or how to attack a big challenge and how to succeed. And it turns into a really fun but also inspiring read.
Got it. Very good. So how to fight a Hydra. I'm not so up on my Greek mythology, and I have a 14-year-old daughter, so I'm more along the lines of how to train your dragon than I are to how to fight your Hydra. But I appreciate that. Danny, a book, podcast, a resource that you recommend for the VARs and ISVs listening today?
I think one of a good book that's very relevant to today's conversation is Who Moved My Cheese, right? Transitioning over to a PaaS or SaaS model. I think that book is really relevant to that.
Got it. Very good. All right. How to Fight a Hydra and Who Moved My Cheese. I will add those to my reading list. So, well, that's all the time that we have for today. We hope you enjoyed our discussion. If you did, be sure to subscribe to the RSPA YouTube channel and the Trusted Advisor podcast so you never miss an episode. We'd also appreciate if you'd rate us wherever you find your favorite podcasts. The more stars, the better. That's my philosophy. And if you'd like to learn more best practices for VARs and ISVs in the point of sale channel, check out the RSPA blog. You can find it at gorspa.org and then clicking on RSPA blog. Before we go, thanks again very much to Danny and Brett for sharing their wisdom with us today. Gentlemen, that was excellent information. Also, thanks to RSPA Marcom Manager Chris Arnold for his production work, Joseph McDade for our music, and last but not least, thanks so much to you for listening. Our goal at the RSPA is to accelerate the success of our members in the point-of-sale ecosystem by providing knowledge and connections. For more information, please visit our website at gorspa.org. Thanks again for listening and watching, and goodbye, everybody.